Get your man the flute to play song, the fuck.
Dear Gwitch, everyone, Kajima Tashiv, and welcome back to episode number 87 of the Inline G Flute Podcast with me, your host, Inline G. Well, lads and ladies, and all those in between, as this episode comes out today, Friday, whatever it is, Friday the 20th, whatever it is of February, old Inline G here is celebrating Cologne Carnival. He's on day 2, actually, so listen, maybe send me a message and check if I'm okay. Maybe this episode is my last ever episode. Maybe this is coming to you from beyond the grave. Ooh. But here, lads, I knew I wasn't going to be here this week. So I had to pre-record this episode well in advance, and I wanted to make sure that the one coming out was going to be an absolute belter. So I went out and got another belter guest. This week's guest is absolutely smashing it right now. You'll have seen her all over your social media, and here you might have even been lucky enough to have her gentle voice in your ears. It is none other than flute superstar, mindset coach, podcaster, social media star, and all-round purveyor of kindness, Chelsea Tanner. Now, lads, I've been such a fan of Chelsea's, especially over the last few months, and I've legit been binging her podcast, Align Your Mind, for a couple of weeks now. It is incredible. It's genuinely helped me out a lot in my life, so really good on it. She's just the kind of person that makes you feel good about yourself, so really go check it out. Now, this is a fascinating episode, and I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed having Chelsea on. She's one of the good guys in the flute world, and honestly, lads, I'm all about collecting those good guys here on Inline G. So regular listeners, skip ahead right now, a minute or so. You know what's about to come up. But if you're new here, just lend me your ears for just a wee minute. The Inline G podcast is free, and it always will be free. That is a guarantee. But if you want to support the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute Podcast. Listen, lads, I make an episode of this podcast every single Friday, come rain nor shine. Now, it costs €5 a month to sign up to the Patreon. If you watch or listen to every episode of this podcast and you think at the end of the month, if I saw Gareth in a bar, I'd buy him a pint or a cup of coffee to say thank you for making all that entertainment for me the 4+ hours I got. You can do it digitally. This podcast is the definition of a small independent podcast. I do everything around here on my own. Audio production, video production, script writing, graphic design, marketing, everything is done here on my own. Now, we could get sponsors on, but if I get sponsors on, they won't let me talk about mental health, they won't let me talk about politics, they won't let me talk about various other topics. So, I'd rather tell them to go fuck themselves. So that's where you come in. It is funded by you, the listener. You guys sign up to the Patreon, okay? Now, you won't actually get any extra episodes, because I really do believe everyone should be getting the same episodes of Inline G, whether they can afford it or not. But you will get a couple of benefits. You'll get your own trading card. I'll be in contact with you guys before anyone else for questions to put the guests, etc., etc. But the main thing you're doing is supporting the podcast. So if you can afford to donate €5 a month or whatever that is in your currency, it is incredibly appreciated. You can sign up over there, and you can unsubscribe at any time, straight away. No weird fees or anything. What I would also recommend is do not do it on the app, but go onto your browser instead, because if you do it on the app, App will take a cut out of it. So go onto the browser and do it that way, like a big boy purchase, like a Millenial flight purchase, onto your browser. So lads, if you can afford it, €5 a month, it means the world to me. You're keeping this podcast alive. But listen, if you can't afford it, times are hard, there's a cost of living crisis where most of us are artists, that's fine. You can keep listening for free. Someone else is paying so that you don't have to. So lads, here is this week's Inline G Flute Podcast with the kind, sweet, and overall magnificent Chelsea Tanner.
Sounds good.
And the first thing I have to talk to you about, not actually anything related to this podcast episode whatsoever, but I just thought the first time I chat to you, I'm going to say this, but do you know, if I was born a girl, I was going to be called Chelsea.
Really?
And the reason is because my dad and I both support Chelsea as our football team.
Yeah.
So my dad got to choose if I was a girl. And I think my mum is delighted that I wasn't a girl and she didn't have to name her daughter after a football team.
True. Yeah. That makes sense.
Probably for the best. I'm assuming you're not named after the London-based soccer team.
I am not. my my uncle was gonna, or my aunt and uncle were gonna name their dog Chelsea, but my cousin couldn't say the name, and my parents were like, "That's a cool name."
Oh, and that was that?
And then the dog's name was Fluffy, and they were like, "We think this name is cool." So,
And there you are.
yeah,
It is a cool name. And I'm going to do this thing where I'm probably going to say your name out loud quite a lot because I just like the fact that I can talk about Chelsea on this podcast, like sort
There you go.
of sneak it through. So it's a great moment for me personally. I'm delighted with this. And also you've just seen as well, any of the audio listeners won't be able to see this, but the
right.
jumper I'm wearing, I could not believe that I still had this. It made my day because I was binging your pod. I didn't intend to binge your podcast, but I was walking to work this morning. I thought, I'll listen to 1 or 2 episodes just to refresh my memory a wee bit of it. And before you know it, I'm 5 episodes deep. I got totally hooked on it. It's actually such a
They're
beautiful
short
podcast. Yeah, but they're Has nobody ever, by the way, has anyone ever said you should do ASMR? You've got a very relaxing voice. Has that came up?
Yeah, yeah. Like I get that feedback a lot where like the timbre of my voice is very relaxing, something
Yeah.
like that. But it actually used to be such an insecurity of mine
Oh, really?
because everyone's like, "Oh, speak up, like you can be loud, you can be, extra, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just like like my energy level is like quite chill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm like, this is me. And now that like I have microphones, and it's so funny, I'll do captions on like my Instagram things, and I have that little mic. If I don't have that mic, sometimes it like doesn't pick up my voice.
Oh, really?
It's
Is
like
that soft?
the
Okay.
timbre, I can make it loud. Like I can teach in front of a class, I
Yeah.
can do that, but naturally it's just very soft. So like this is kind of
Okay.
perfect where I'm like, oh, I'll just like let the microphone do that work, and like people can hear
Yeah.
what I actually sound like.
Yeah, but you have like a really, there's something about your voice. It must be the timbre. It must be in that lovely register where it just like hums in your ears. It's very, it's very, very nice. And I don't say that very often about American accents either. So take that as a huge compliment.
I do.
Normally,
Thank
American
you.
accents in my ears. I'm like, but yeah,
Like nails on a
anyway.
chalkboard.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I shouldn't say that again. Most of my listenership is American, but I think they love it. I think they love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, silly goose. So yeah, I found this jumper in my attic today. I was telling you before, but basically, I had bought it as a Christmas present for my ex-girlfriend. Then I got dumped, and there's a load of presents in there of hers. And I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna take it out and wear it because it feels like a really appropriate moment because you do have an episode about it. If you don't mind, I want to go straight in there to ask you about that because my favorite episode of your podcast is the Silly Goose Method. Is that a you thing, or did you figure that somewhere else?
No, I just so basically it started when I was teaching younger students, and I wanted to just remark about like, oh, I did something and I'm about to say stupid, and I'm like, I can't say stupid in front of this 11-year-old. Like I don't want to call myself stupid. Just like as a
Yeah.
rule, just I don't want to model that for somebody else. And so I started saying silly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that was so silly. And then like obviously that kind of I brought into my own life where I was like, oh, that was like so silly of me. Oh my gosh. And then I started calling myself a silly goose, which is just like so much more fun.
It is fun.
Than calling yourself stupid.
It is so much more fun than calling yourself stupid, yeah.
And so, and the reason I've been kind of have a podcast, I do all this like mindset work is because my relationship with myself is just so awful. And so this was like a fun and silly way to just like call my brain a silly goose. And I actually had a mindset coaching client the other week being like, oh my gosh, my brain was honking so much this week. And I was like, that's so perfect.
That's great
they were like,
as well.
They were like, it was being so silly. And I was like, amazing. Because we tend to just believe all of our thoughts. But if we can be like, my brain's just being a silly goose, or just like I made a silly goose move here or there, like it's so much lighter. Yeah.
It really is. And I was thinking about this a little bit today because on Saturday I had a rehearsal for a gig and there was a part of it's a piece by Carl Jenkins and there was a bit in it where there's like this big piccolo solo. And during the rehearsal it goes up to a top G on the piccolo and I had like a little bit of water behind the thumb in my piccolo and I went to play, it just didn't come out, but I blasted like a really awful wrong note. and the rehearsal was a little bit tense. It was a last minute rehearsal. The music didn't turn up. There was a bit of tension in the room. And as soon as I played that wrong note, I brought the piccolo down, and I had the very conscious moment of thinking, I have two options here. One, I can say sorry and be a bit embarrassed, and it's going to add to the tension of the room. Or two, which is what I did, is went, whoa. And I just made that face, went, whoa. And then the conductor laughed, and everyone laughed. Like, there we are. That's it. Cut the tension. Everything's fine. That was a real silly goose moment on my behalf. But you really can't just take the tension out of it by just adapting slightly different language to what you're used to. And it is a choice, I think.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think it makes it less, like, I think you can do it in a way where it feels disrespectful, like you don't care. Like, I think there's sometimes a fine line there, right?
Yeah.
But if you're sort of coming from a genuine place in a rehearsal, like something like that, where you're like, you do really care, and you're like, oh, okay, that happened, right? You know, but I think it can be really, really helpful, especially practicing too. Like,
oh yeah,
like, why are we not just like kind of laughing at ourselves instead of like taking everything like so personally into heart, you know, like every mistake we make.
Yeah. Do you think you do that now, even with your own practice? Have you fully adapted it where you never call yourself stupid in a practice room? Or is there still, does that creep in the odd time?
I don't. Yeah, I feel like my practicing I've like trained myself very specifically to not necessarily comment a lot of judgment words. Like, if something comes up in my mind that is like really judgy or self-critical, or like, oh, really, you think that was good? Like, that'll come up sometimes. And I'm like, I'll be able to see it and be like, what a silly goose thought. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be able to see it now, like, go by. It won't affect me. I used to just say that to myself all the time, and it would affect me every time, you know?
Yeah.
And so like that adds up. But now I've like been like, I think my number one priority since I've started this work has been my mind, and like flute comes second.
Okay.
You know, so I think that my flute playing has benefited from it, because I have like this relationship with myself in practice where I'm not going to like talk badly about myself, you know? And so like that's I don't think that's ever to my detriment. Do you know what I mean?
Never.
Yeah. So no, but yeah.
No, it never. Like, okay, I used to be really bad at this. I used to really attack myself in the practice room a lot, like verbally out loud. I go, "You're an idiot. Why did you do that?" Or the thing I always do is, "Oh, Gareth," like as if I'm talking to myself. I'm like, I'm Gareth. I don't need to talk to Gareth. But I've took that away. I think teaching has changed my attitude a lot towards that, because I'll see students come in where they will get like visibly upset over a wrong note or something. And my automatic explanation is always, it's fine. Like, I really genuinely do not care that you've played a wrong note in this lesson. It really does not bother me. You can go and practice it. You'll fix it. I really cannot stress enough how little I care about that. But they never believe me. They're always like, well, I care. Like, you don't need to care. Really, it's a wrong note. It's not that big a deal. Nobody cares.
Right. And I've been trying to figure that one out for a while, because I think it's not an example like that we show students. You know, like there's no recordings, and like now recordings are so edited that like you could edit a recording so that no one ever breathes, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's just like we hear only like the best of the best of the best, and I think it's perpetuated in teaching that everyone means well. I'm not saying that this is ever done with like an intent to like make everyone perfect so we all feel like we can't be like imperfect, but it's like, oh, you have unlimited times to record, so you better get it right. Like, you know, like all of these things that were like, oh, you know, I have the opportunity to make it exactly the way I want it to, so I have to do that. And I think that that's sort of I don't know, I think it'll be our downfall if I might go that broad, but like, you know, like if we're too caught up in like, this has to be perfect, like, and I have to do this or else my nervous system is shocked. Like, whoa, the stakes are so high, and people are like, I don't know why I get nervous. I'm like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? Like, like
Yeah.
it's all like totally tied into each other. When it's like we're like, oh, it's just a wrong note, but it's like, yeah, but my brain makes it mean that now I'm like a bad musician
Yeah.
and my identity's threatened. But we don't like go that deep. Usually we think it's like, oh, it's just a wrong note. But some people, that's their reaction and their response.
Yeah, again, would have been my reaction. But even when you're saying that, like one of my favorite performances, two actually come to mind. My flute teacher back in Paris, I went to watch her rehearse the L'après-midi, the Debussy, and in the solo in the rehearsal at the start, she screwed something up. She took a breath where she wasn't meant to take one and stuff. And I remember thinking that is so cool that a player of your level is doing that in the rehearsal and just didn't care. It's like, yeah, I'll fix it in the concert, be fine. And I'm going, oh, that's it. You're human too. And there's actually a recording. I'll not say which recording because I don't want people going and bombarding it. There's a recording of her on YouTube playing the César Franck Sonata, and there's an absolute stinker of her wrong note in it, like an absolute howler. And it is my favorite moment of that recording. By far my favorite recording because it's so human and like it's actually funny. You know he didn't mean them. Like you know she's not a bad flute player. Obviously she's incredible. She just played one wrong note and it's great. I love it. The imperfection is beautiful.
I know. It reminds me of this summer when I went to the Aspen Music Festival, and everyone is wound so tight there. Like
Yeah.
we're all just nervous wrecks, and I was when I was there, and like I went to see this musician Kishi Bashi. He like has like he's a singer and a violinist and like loops like violin music and sings over it, and it was really cool. And there's like a ton of like students at this concert, and he messed up one of his looping things and had to start over.
Okay.
And there was no louder cheer from
Seriously?
the audience because we were all like, yes, you messed up. Like permission
Yeah.
granted. Like,
Yeah, if you could do it then I could do it then. Yeah.
yeah, because we're not like, oh, now does he deserve to be on that stage because he messed up? It's like, no, like that's ridiculous.
Of
you know?
course.
Yeah, like,
But we don't do that to ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, we just think like, oh my gosh, if I miss a note, I don't deserve to be here because there's
Yeah.
10,000 other musicians who could have this spot or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you talk so much about the self-talk thing. That's a huge thing because we do have to change, and it is a very conscious choice to just go out and say, right, I'm going to use these words instead. I remember actually, I've been drawing this parallel so much recently because dating and playing music are very similar. There's a lot of self-esteem on the line. There's a lot of things that you think are very attached to your identity. When you're rejected in music, you take it very personally. When you're rejected in dating, you take it incredibly personally as well. And one of the things I've started doing with myself is every time I'm going out, not that I date all the time, okay, let's clarify that, but every time I go out on a date, I stand in front of the mirror and I give myself a wink. It's like I give myself a quick wink and I'm like, that's the man. There you are. I do a lot of that. And when I go to the bathroom, like nights out and stuff, if I'm in the pub, I walk past and go, look at him. Yeah. And it's me talking to myself in a little bit of a better way. And I thought, if I bring that into my flute playing, and when I play something right, I go, yeah, that wasn't bad. No. Or just in general, going, I'm not bad. This is sounding quite good. I'm enjoying this. Yeah. That changes everything. You instill that in the practice room and then you bring it with you to performance.
Totally. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's working great. I actually... sorry, go ahead.
No, that's good. It's so funny. I've loved all of your podcasts on the dating thing because I've like, I was on dating apps for the first time this year. Personally.
Oh god, yeah, it's fun.
And so yeah, it's crazy. So I'm like, oh my gosh, another flute is like doing this. It's like navigating like how do you introduce yourself as a musician? Like all these like that. It's a whole.
Do you say musician or do you say flute player?
I say musician because flute and food sound so similar, and people are like, "What's food performance? Is that like nutrition?" Like,
Don't even start me in this. This is the worst thing about this podcast is because of my accent as well and the very slight lisp I have. The amount of people in the first episode, like the Inline G food podcast, I'm like, no, no, and all like the cap cut, like auto generated captions, so they always think I'm saying food. Maybe that's why I'm having no luck with dating. Maybe people think I'm a food player. Maybe that's it. That's explained. Thank you, Chelsea. That's it.
It's like, are you a chef?
Like, wow, I'm cooking. Yeah.
No, I feel like. Yeah, it's weird because then I'm sort of like, I feel like it's sort of like an elevator pitch for yourself, and it's really made me be like, I have to be so good with what I'm doing and how I am and what I'm introducing myself as. It's almost like a mini like bio or reflection of myself, like
Yeah.
every time I introduce myself. And I feel like I've had to get like really comfortable with that, and comfortable with people like not getting it, and people like, I don't know. It's just like really an interesting thing of like how people respond to a musician. Are they like, oh, so how, but like, how do you make money? Or
Oh
like,
yeah, that one. Right.
just like all these things. But it's like, oh, it's like, it made me very curious from a mindset perspective. It's like really curious. You got to be like really good with like owning who you are and what you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting that like I've really got my because I think this is actually something I was going to talk to you about as well. Is we actually have a shared episode in podcasting themes because you had saw that thread on Facebook Flute Forum about professional and what does it mean and are you professional or not? And I saw the same one and we both did an episode on that without knowing that we both did it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's something I've been thinking about a lot with that as well because when I first started dating and stuff, you get that question all the time. How do you make money off that? And you feel like you're nearly having to defend yourself by going, well, no, I'm a professional musician. Like I get paid money to do it, and the money pays for my rent. So yeah, I am. But I always thought like, am I a professional musician? I was always a bit like, I don't know if I'm worthy of that title.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I think my biggest takeaway was like, why why does
Why do
it
you care?
matter, right? Like I don't know, like maybe, like I'm sure there are people who get paid to play the flute that are far worse than people who just do it as a hobby. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Like, like, so what are we like, does that mean that I can market myself well? Does that make me a professional? Because then that's different from actually playing the instrument.
yeah,
And so it's like, or does it mean that I can teach it well, but that also means I could play it well? Like, why are we trying to create more like status things in the
yeah.
industry than there already are? Like, I feel like there's like so much going into it already. But at the same time, I'm like, I think about this so much because like, if you're a professional, like if you're an accountant, like you get a job, you're already a professional. You pass the test, you
Yeah.
pass the certification, you're like, you're doing people's taxes. For us, we've been doing this since we're like 10.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like the notion that we aren't experts even just by the time we get to college, that's
Yeah.
crazy to me. But yet, and I'm like, I found myself after my doctorate and I was like, can I do this? You know what I mean? Like, can I play the flute? I don't know. Like the fact that I would doubt it then is crazy, but it shows that has literally nothing to do with how well you play. I don't know.
No, that's very true. It's not like at all. One thing I actually find is when I have a lot of friends that aren't musicians, thank God, because I couldn't hang out with musicians all the time. But it's refreshing sometimes because even when I have gigs and stuff, I'll be like, oh, I have to go practice for a few hours, and their reaction is always like, surely there's nothing left to practice. Surely you've completed it. And like I love that enthusiasm, and I love that. I wish that were true, but yeah, to an extent, I should go, well, yeah, I'm good. Like I know I've owned my craft over a year. If you've done anything else for that amount of time, you wouldn't go, well, I keep needing to make it better. But I like that. I like that attitude of like, no, you need to practice. Kids have to practice. You can practice. Well, I wish. But there is something nice about it. There's a bit of truth to it, Finn.
I think so. I think we don't own that part enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like like I think that sometimes, and I'll encounter this with like students who are like collegiate level usually, where they're like, oh, I have to learn this whole piece. I'm like, yeah, but you're not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Like, like you have the ability to play anything. Like I would say if you graduate college, like you have the ability to learn whatever piece of music. Like, and that ability is huge. But we don't think about it that way a lot. We're like, oh, I can't play that. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You just haven't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think there's like nuance to it, but I think so much of how we're trained, we like dismiss ourselves. We're like, oh, I have to practice this, or I have to do that. Like I have to like rethink and rework. It's like, no, you're sitting on like a mountain of gold here. Just like use it. But if we don't trust ourselves, we can't use it,
And why do you think classical musicians were so bad at that? Where does that come from originally? Do you have any theories on it yet?
I mean, I think pedagogy has so much to do with it. And I think that how we're taught, which is one on one, which I think is unique too, right? Like that's not something that ever
Very
really
unique, yeah.
happens in anything else. Um, I think what kind of instills it as well is like there are defined parameters, and we don't really emphasize like the creative aspect of it as much. Like if
Mm-hmm.
someone's like writing music, they're starting from like their own musical context and like a blank piece of paper and like
Yeah.
what or just ideas in their head. And there literally can't be a right and wrong. Whereas we have like literal parameters. So it's so easy to get caught in the right and wrong of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like, oh, I played this note right, I played this note wrong. um like there is that, and we don't all, and a lot of teaching is, how do I get this note to come out, how do I
Yeah.
logistically play this thing, which is like so valid and has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if we kind of like tend to the other part, which is like, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
Like, what are we trying to convey? How can we make this cool? Why is it cool and fun? Like, I'll just go on like rampages about like, oh, this like motive here is coming back here, but like, why is it different now? And like,
Yeah.
we've taken our audience on a journey, and like, we're not doing that with 12-year-olds, and I think we should. Like, I think that like that's we're like, oh, we have to have a certain level of like technical facility and ability, and then we can be artistic. It's like, or or we could incorporate why it's cool like from the very beginning, in at least some small way.
Yeah.
And I think that would make room for more creative thinking. But like, we get caught up in logistics because there's band class, there's like they've like the kids got to feel comfortable playing their instrument, like, we want to facilitate that so much, so it's not an easy balance, but I think we could tend a little more to the creative side, is my hypothesis.
Actually, out of curiosity, I'm just thinking of this now. Do you think the younger, what do we call the younger generation now, the Gen Z? Like 18-year-olds now, the Gen Z. Do you think they have a different attitude towards perfectionism and stuff that our generation would have had? Do you think there's any differences you've noticed? I'm asking you because I've actually never thought about this until right now.
That is really interesting. I feel like the sort of curated like perfection is slowly becoming like, wait, what are you doing? Like, why are you putting on this show? For people. I think
Okay.
like online spaces help with that a lot. If you scroll TikTok, people are like, no makeup, just talking to their camera, and it's getting millions of views. You know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
about the equivalent of like doing that as a flutist. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That like doesn't really happen in our world. You know what I mean? Like, there's not that sort of genuine like portrayal as much. I feel like a lot of times we are trained to be very curated in our approach to our careers. And
Yeah.
I think in that way, we could be like, I hope we're highly influenced by that, just because I'm like, I don't think we need to like create more separation from like people in the classical
Yeah.
music world.
Yeah.
And I do think that they have a different approach. I think that it could play into perfectionism, but I do also think that if we're talking about the classical music world specifically, there's got to be some like institutional like leaders that are
Mm-hmm.
like, that it's actually okay to mess up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder, I sort of wonder what generation is going to be. That I do notice the difference with our generation, the millennial generation, as opposed to the baby boomer generation with our attitude towards these things. But then, isn't it famously so that millennials are like crippled with anxiety and terrible about, like even in the normal workplace? we're people pleasers. We were always brought up with that kind of thing. I think going through a couple of recessions didn't help with that either. But I see with my Gen Z students, like the ones that are like 17, 18, they don't have that as much. They don't have this people pleasing thing as much. They don't say sorry half as much as I would have at their age, which is very interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think they they should, right? Yeah, like I think that's great, you know. And I don't think there's like, I think the idea that there's like a right and wrong way to act has really debilitated our industry in a lot of ways. You know, from being relatable, from being like human, which like why I love your podcast so much, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I would talk about the flute to a friend. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
like, it's just like it's so relatable, but you listen to like classical music radio and it makes me want to just like gouge my ears out, because they're talking about it like it's like this high art thing, you know. It's just it makes me nuts. So in that way, I really hope that like our generation and generations to come are not like obsessed with this perfection and like looking to the past for greatness, and like that drives me nuts also, but that's another tangent. But
no, but I get that. Yeah, the perfectionism thing is such an interesting topic. I really hope that Gen Z change their attitude towards perfectionism, especially in classical music. And this idea about the TikTok thing, I'd be super interested in that. I'd love to see someone come along and like, do the no makeup tutorial version of flute playing. I would love to see someone bring that on, because obviously there is the 100 days of practice and all those kind of things. But you can see, as someone who posts themselves playing on the internet, I can see the little moment where like that's like the 37th take. I know it. You can just tell. You can tell straight away. Like, you did not just put that together, because it sounds good. And if you're doing 100 days straight of practice, at least 10 of those are going to be terrible. That's fine. That's being a musician.
Right. So yeah, it's sort of like, and also what is practice then? Like, are you practicing performing? I think there's so much value in like the 100 days of practice and the 37 takes.
Oh yeah, big time.
But I think that like, are we practicing for like what does practice actually sound like? And I actually think that whole thing, I'm like, if you sound amazing when you practice, you're not practicing. Like if you think you sound really good, that's not it, you know. Like, I mean, you know, it's I always say this, I'm like, make ugly sounds, like that's what it's for. Like I don't know. And but I think the culture has sort of like ingrained in us is this idea that it's always a representation of you as a musician. And I'm like,
snapshot,
well, and
hear that word all the time. Oh, it's a snapshot of your playing. Like, oh.
It's like I have to have this like perfectly curated portfolio on Instagram of this feed of just perfection, or else people are going to think a certain thing, you know? And it's like can we not do that? But at the same time, like the courage it takes to post something that's imperfect, that's huge. So real. Like it's so, and most people don't know how to deal with it. But I actually think it's an amazing way to overcome a lot of fear around like playing and performance anxiety in general. That's just like in your pocket. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just putting something out. I mean, for years, I was terrified of putting anything in the internet, because I'm always like, well, what if I go for an audition or something? And they're like, oh, we saw that video you put in your Instagram 3.5 years ago. We haven't forgot about that, Gareth. Don't even bother coming into the audition room. Walk out that door. We saw you 3.5 years ago. We remember. Obviously, that never happens, but my anxiety was terrible for it. I remember the first time I ever posted a video online was during lockdown, and the amount of times I practiced that, and it was a stupid video. I think it was actually the very first one was me playing How Deep Is Your Love by the Bee Gees in the flute quartet version. And I'm stressing about that. Yeah, and I'm like, really, Gary? Like, this is not... Because it's the kind of thing someone's going to look at and go, oh, and then that's it. It's gone forever. They throw it up with their thumb, it's gone forever. Nobody cares.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, you might hyperfixate on it, which, you know, like, for better, for worse. But, like, it's the idea, and I said this to my students too, like it was like at the beginning of lockdown, I was teaching at a university, and this student was like, I could never post a flute video. I'm like, how many times have you liked a flute video you didn't have the sound on for?
That's such a great point.
Like, this person's putting themselves out there. I'm in a public place and I can't listen right now. I'm still going to like it.
Yeah, do that
Or
all the
like,
time.
people might not even be listening to you. Like, that's not
Yeah.
bad. It's just like what it is. But like,
Yeah.
that's like, that happens all the time. And like, there's so much more nuance, and like, no one's actually listening that closely. And like,
No.
even if they are, even if someone's like, oh my gosh, I could do that so much better, I'm like, you're welcome for the confidence boost.
Yeah,
Do
there
it.
you are.
That's
Yeah.
great. Like, I don't know.
That is so bad. That comment about watching, like, if I see the flute anywhere on my Instagram, instantly just I'm like that, throw a bit of support out for the boys, but I never listen. And to be honest, I've put things in my stories of me playing, and it's been like 20 seconds. I will be damned if I'm watching someone play 20 seconds on their story. At the most I would watch is like 3 seconds. I'm like, right, I'm done with this. That's plenty. I mean, don't care.
Yeah, and that's fine.
That's what I do with
like,
all my content on Instagram, though. 20 seconds of attention. I haven't had 20 seconds of attention since I was 17. 20 seconds straight of attention? Are you kidding me? I wish I had that.
For sure. And it makes you think like, oh, how much energy am I putting into this where it's just going to disappear? We think it's always, and I get this question at, like, if I do talks at universities, I'm always an advocate for like having a presence on social media.
Okay.
Because to be honest, like, I don't think I wouldn't be here on this podcast without my social media. Like, this would not happen. I wouldn't have had my job at Tone Base. I would not have had so many different things in my life if I hadn't like put myself out there online. And I'm super grateful for it. And I think it's a really amazing tool. But like, I think people are like, but what if you post something and then you feel really bad about it? And I was like, you can delete it.
Just delete it, yeah.
You can just delete it. No one's like bootleg screen recording everything you do. Like, it's gonna be fine.
Oh, I wish they did. I wish someone cared about me enough to do that. I would love that. I could do with a bit of scandal. It'd be great.
Right?
But nobody cares.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, if that's happening, like, take it as a compliment. Like, you've made it.
I'd be delighted. Are you kidding me? If someone was bootleg screen recording me and going like, oh, we deleted it, but look, we found it again, I'd be delighted.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
I'm trying my best to do things. Yeah, I'm doing my best to be as controversial as I can, but nobody cares. I'm actively trying to be controversial. Nobody cares. So imagine if you just play around. No, really, nobody cares. There's way worse things on social media at the minute. To be honest, when you get to a flute player, it's usually like a bit of a respite from, like, Donald Trump and the rise of the far right. And you're like, oh, there's a flute. Oh, okay. Take this little moment for a second.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like, that is... like, part of that is sort of why I'm like, we like literally kind of like as a mission, like kind of need to share at this point. Like, 100%. You're doing a service to your people in your digital life, like if you post something and it's like, even like your friend from high school who still like follows you for some reason. And they're like, oh, this is kind of actually nice to hear this for 20 seconds if they do listen along. Do you know what I mean? Or even 3 seconds. It's like it's a break. It's like a mini vacation from like the hellscape.
The horrors. Yeah. That's so true though. I am delighted when I get a bit of flute or a bit of football popping up in my TikTok. I'm like, oof, because I realized that I've been on TikTok for an hour and I'm raging. Like clenched fist. I'm like, and then I'm like, okay, this is actually exactly what I needed just for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, I wish. But,
yeah, I know.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, musicians, I think we have a little bit of a role to do. I never thought about that as much until right now, but I think, we could be using that. People should post just for that reason, because everyone's relieved to see it.
Yeah.
There's so much worse on social media now. I'm not going to judge someone's flute playing. I really do not care in the slightest. I swear, I maybe did it when I was like 16, but that was a reflection of me more than anyone else. Nowadays, I would never judge anyone's flute playing that they put. I'm always like, fair play to you for putting that out there. I'm always amazed by them.
No, seriously, like the people who comment critically on someone else's video, I'm like, okay, let's see yours.
Yeah.
Let's see yours. Because it's never that person. Like if I see someone posting their playing, I'm like, oh, like the mental gymnastics one has to go through to post a playing video.
Yeah.
That is so admirable.
And
You know
fair
what I
play to you for
mean?
doing it. Honestly, yeah, because we've done
Yeah.
it, and especially if it's like your first or second video, it is so anxiety. It's hours. I know that
I
person's been thinking for days, maybe even.
I thought I was gonna throw up when I first
Yeah,
posted. Like I
isn't
remember
that wild?
I remember the video. It was like 2017. I did 100 days of practice. I was like so in my head about it. I was like, okay, but like, what are they gonna think? I did 37 takes, like you said. Like, I was like, I was like, this is definitely not practice. This is like this. We're pretty far along in this piece. This is like a performance. This is
Yeah,
not practice at all. Like, if I'm being really real about it, but like,
yeah.
that's totally it, and like that makes sense. And I was like totally entrenched in perfectionism at that point, but now I'm like, I don't actually for myself want to do 1,000 takes. So I'll post, maybe I'll do one or two. I don't know. We'll see how I
Yeah,
feel. But
yeah.
but I think the people putting themselves out there, no matter what they're doing, it's like, it gets easier once you do it a lot.
Oh, easy. Yeah,
But yeah, and I wouldn't think twice about it. But I think that the now if I make an error and someone's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, I'm like, I just would laugh.
oh,
I'm,
I
I'm
would
like,
love it.
okay,
I
good
would
for
love
you.
it. I would go hard on someone. I've been waiting for someone to criticize me on the internet because I will go hard on them. Like, man, if you got nothing better to do with your time, if you've not got any friends, seriously, you're sitting here making those kind of comments. Yeah, really, get a life, man. Get a life.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's so sad.
and it's like, I always think about that. Like, usually when people comment and say stuff, it's like, have you watched like Parks and Recreation, that TV show
Oh yeah,
at all?
yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah,
When Ron Swanson goes into a Home Depot and someone's like, can I help you? And he's like, I know more than you.
yeah, yeah,
And that's always how I feel. I'm like,
yeah. Like, who do you think you are?
okay.
Okay, yeah. Excuse me, you heard it? Do you know who I am?
It's like,
I totally agree with that.
it's
Yeah,
fine. At a certain point, it's like, it's never someone who is like had the same experience that you have and
no,
has posted a ton and like knows what that's like putting that out there. It's always someone who's like thinks they know a lot and gets security from being right.
yeah.
And I think that like that's so telling of,
And
I
we
don't know,
probably should, to
just
be
like
honest,
the climate
pity
of
those
those
people.
commenters.
Yeah, actually, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you, and it's going to tie into that. And again, the internet's cut out, so the audio listeners are going to get like a really harsh cut here again. But it's fine. Listen, we roll with it. Perfectionism, we don't need it. Who needs it? Never heard of her.
Yeah, we don't know her.
One thing that I think is so interesting, and I understand it entirely, but I was listening to your episode on that flute forum comment, that whole thing, and being a professional, what it means, and people commented what they thought a professional was, and I was still so shocked that you had said that you took it quite personally at some point, and you
Yeah.
had felt quite bad about it, because from the outset I'm going, yeah, but you're Chelsea Tanner, everything's grand, you're doing great, why would you take someone's opinion personally? But we do, don't we? Like, it doesn't matter what level. I actually found it quite nice to know that you do take it personally, even when you get to your level, you're still like, yeah, well, it can still hurt.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, of course. I feel like, which is so funny that you say that because I'm like, who am I? I don't know. Whatever.
But exactly, but does that
But
ever stop? Do we always keep doing that? Like, no matter what level you get to, do you always hold on to that?
oh, I think
Yeah,
so. Right? Like, I mean, I and it hit me for like a second where I felt my nervous system engage from that post of
yeah,
people being like, it's only if you make your sole income from performing only. And I was like, like,
yeah.
and sometimes, and I think I wrote a Substack about this, but I heard this metaphor from Chanel Miller, who's an author of the book Know My Name, and she talks about like depression as like a toilet paper tube that you look through.
Okay,
You can only see through it, and you don't have a greater context. So every little thing that goes by it feels really big. And
okay,
I think about being a flute player the same way.
okay.
And so like if I'm only a flutist and I look through this and this is my definition of being a flute player, then every comment on social media is threatening. Every little thing that someone says is a threat to my identity and worth as a person.
Yeah,
And so and so the best thing I ever did, I actually tried to quit the flute in the pandemic, but,
Okay.
which is like, yeah, which is a whole other thing. I didn't practice for 8 months. I was like, I actually think I'm going to leave it all behind and do something completely different.
Okay. Yeah.
But if I don't, if I think about myself as only a flutist, and then people are like, yeah, and you're only a professional flutist if you blah blah blah, like that's still like that activated that part of my brain that there's some residual stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I've largely let go of that and been like, well, I can actually just play the flute and do a lot of different stuff. It doesn't mean I'm worse at the flute. It's not zero sum, you know. And so that was what kind of activated me. And so I felt really compelled to comment, because I was like, if this is happening in me, and I have done so much work on my own mind and brain to actively not react that way, other people are going to feel like garbage. Like they're going to feel so bad, you know what I mean? So I was like, I felt so like compelled to say something about it, because it's like, what are we doing? Can we not just appreciate each other as artists, whether you have a job at a coffee shop and you're an artist, you're a flutist? Like, if you're like, do you know what I mean? Like, does it doesn't devalue someone's art if they're not like only performing. Like, like that's the status stuff that I think I'm allergic to at this point. I've developed an allergy to it.
I get it. Yeah. It's interesting how we have slightly different reactions to that as well, because I would have had that a lot as well. But I think my reaction now, after going through the podcast and going through my own thing with this and coming back to music in a very healthy way, when I see that kind of comment, my reaction isn't triggered. My reaction is like, who do you think you are? I get so angry. I'm like, come here. It's like, I'm going to have a word with you. Get over here. Who do you think you are? And I leave way too many hate comments in that Facebook group, because I'm like, you pipe down, all right? We don't need to hear from you. Me, you bully. That's all you are. I need to stop doing that as well. But that's a reflection of me. I need to cool down.
No, I think that's needed. I think that's so needed. Like, I had one the other day. Same, that Facebook group will be like, it's honestly, at this point, it's like fuel for content.
It's great. Yeah, half this podcast is that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and so it's like, but the other day someone posted, they were like, well, my teacher said I can't make it as an orchestral musician, so I'm dealing with that news. I saw your
comment, actually. Yeah.
I was like, it is nobody's business to tell you what you can and cannot do. Like, that's the part of this where I'm like, I think the idolization within the industry is also very real, where you trust your teacher more than you trust yourself. And like, that's something that I think we do ingrain in students, where it's like, your teacher knows best, you have to do what I do.
Yeah.
And like, yes, obviously your grade, there's such a power dynamic there, right? Like, and that complicates so many other things, but like, the fact that this person just thought, and that commenters were like, well, agreed. It's unfortunate. Yeah. I was shook by that. I was like, oh, well, that sucks. It's like, no. Wait, we're just taking that to be the truth here? That this person's teacher said they can't do it, and now they're taking that seriously? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, now you can just play for fun. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing for fun, but if you're in the mentality of taking orchestra auditions, that functions so differently in your life, and that adds value to your life in such a different way than just playing for fun.
Yeah.
Like, those two things are functionally so different. So it's like, what if this person loves the pursuit of excellence in that way? And that's the thing they want, you know? Like, it's not just flute playing, you know? I don't know.
It's a huge part of your identity, and it gives you a big sense of meaning. And yeah, again, you can do whatever you want. Who's to say? Oh, you're right, because people jump to defend this very quickly. I'm thinking, we don't even know who the teacher is. We don't even know who this person is. We have zero base on what the credibility is of this person. It could be anybody. Could be anybody. And also, yeah, if your teacher says you can't do it, well, tell the teacher to go fuck themselves and go and do it. If you want to do it. If it's your thing, do it. Don't miss. You can do it. Of course you can. Loads of people have been told no. That's like the famous thing in America, especially of like, I was told no when I did it anyway. That's like what country's built on. People love that rags to riches story.
Exactly. We don't have the perspective so much of the time to zoom out and be like, oh, this is my opportunity now to prove this person wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like this is going to be in my memoir.
Yeah.
Right?
It's going to be a good chapter. Yeah. You're going to make a film out of this someday.
Right. Like this is the part where I was told I wasn't good enough or I wasn't able to do it and I didn't listen. Right. Yes. And like that as soon as someone tells you you're not good enough or you shouldn't do it, it's like maybe that's what we make it mean instead of like, oh, I'm going to do it. Because then if we're not using flute as a part of our life that feels like really amazing to us, it's going to, even if we're like playing for fun or like after all of it, because if I think of flute as a hobby now, I don't think I like that.
Oh yeah. Couldn't agree more, yeah.
Yeah. So that's not how I think of it. I think of myself as a professional, you know? And so like,
and you are.
Yeah. And so that's sort of like I don't know. I think it has to be more than just the act of playing the instruments, like how we relate to it. It's what we get out of it. It's what we put into it. It's like all of these things. And if that stuff doesn't add up to something that feels good to you, I think that's what we struggle with most as flutists.
Yeah.
Instead of just like, can I play Taffnell and Gobert?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
100%. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. And yeah, you're right. It's the role it gives you in your life. Like, I think we've all been told at some point, especially when you're not like a super high flyer. Like if you go to music college, you're doing really well. You're in the top 5% of flute players, but there is that leap beyond that where like, okay, they're going to win an orchestra job. We know they're going to be fine. All the rest of us that even got into that 5%, we've all been told probably at some point, you're not going to make it. But it was my big thing. I wanted to be an orchestral flute player, and I worked so hard towards that. But okay, I haven't got that at the minute. But my life I've got now has been because I was so narrow-minded towards that, and I worked at it so much. It opened so many other doors. So working at that has got me to different countries. It's got me to speak different languages. It's got me to have all these incredible experiences. And now I'm doing podcasts and different things. And it's all happened because I went at it. If I took that to heart and didn't do it, I wouldn't have had the life I have now. So I think the meaning it gave me was so important. Even if it didn't happen, I don't care if it happens anymore. I've got a new life now.
But that's amazing. Like, that's where I got to. I think I took 23 professional orchestra auditions within like 7 years or something.
Yeah,
so
it's
silly.
great, isn't it? Yeah.
I was like,
that is silly. That's a silly word, yeah.
Right? Like, and I was like, this is what it's going to be, because you get into the world and you think it's like that. You think it's so like little, you think it's so focused and narrow-minded, and you think that surely that's not worth anything unless I have the job at the end. It's like, no.
That's it. Yeah.
No, I've spent 10 years dedicated to my excerpt book that's disintegrating. You know, you know, like it is like, I was so devoted and dedicated. That doesn't just leave me.
No.
Like, that doesn't leave anybody. And just because someone didn't choose me for all those auditions, and just because I didn't actually question whether I wanted an orchestra job until I was like 18 auditions in.
Yeah, well, I see him. Yeah.
Like, I still did all that work. That work still lives within me. That knowledge still lives within me, and those opportunities and like 100%. All of that stuff, you know. And I think those experiences, even if like, oh, it wasn't a waste. Just like me quitting the flute for 8 months and trying to do something else was like probably the best thing I could have done. Yeah. To be honest, you know. And like, that's just as valuable. I actually think I got better at the flute by quitting it. You know? Yeah. And it's like, it's so interesting how that all works. And it's really just, it's never, I think, about like the thing we get to. And I've talked to so many musicians, and I've met so many people who are like at the tippy top.
Yeah.
And are so afraid of falling from the tippy top.
Yeah. That's another thing as well. It's so important to take into consideration. Yeah.
Like that they're just like so scared and
Yeah.
out of their mind about it. And like that I mean, I get it, but I can look at them and see how they're operating now and be like, oh my God, no thanks.
Yeah.
You
Oh, I
know?
think that all the time. Yeah, what is it? I heard this phrase recently, the grass is always green on the other side, so maybe you should water your own grass. Something to that effect. Something a little bit better than the way I've just said it. But yeah. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, look, I quit the flute for a while as well.
Yeah.
I came back with a new love, and it's given me the life I have now just by default. So it's worth, yeah, do whatever you want to do. It's great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you some fun questions to wrap this up. We've been on for like
Yeah.
over an hour, which is
That's right.
class.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this. I could definitely do a little bit more on this. But
Yeah.
I sent you the fun questions
Mm-hmm.
already. I don't know if you got a chance to look at them, but that's grand. If
I
you didn't.
did. Yeah. A little bit.
Okay. So
Yeah.
let's blast into them then. Favorite flute concerto? Do you have one?
Okay. So, I will have to say, so my favorite piece ever is Ballade by Frank Martin.
Ah, okay.
That is you can play it with orchestra. So if that
Yeah.
counts, I would say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would say that. Like
But
favorite
what
piece of
else
all
were you
time.
going to say?
I don't know. I love Nielsen, but like the ending leaves me
Is
wanting.
Could not agree more. It
Like
whimpers
it's
out a
the
little bit, yeah.
most frustrating thing. I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
The beginning is so like the first movement. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then we get to the end of the second. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I would say Nielsen if we're going like classic
Okay.
concerto. I would probably say Nielsen just because I love the first movement. But yeah, I don't know.
The Meltdown Ballade is a great one as well. It's so like visceral. I love that piece. It's so like dark and edgy and dirty. It's great.
I'm such an emo kid, like
Yeah.
at heart. Like
That's very emo,
the music.
that piece,
Yeah, that piece is like so emo.
It
I
is.
mean, it goes, it just like, I love it so much. Cause you can really like it is not the normal pretty, you know? And
Yeah.
I love when I can find pieces like that where I'm like, this is kind of dark. I love it.
Yeah, it's got a bit of dirt to it. Yeah, I love that as well. I couldn't agree more. Oh, great answer. Okay, do you remember the first flute album that you bought?
I don't think I didn't buy it, but I remember my first flute album was my mom bought me the Best of James Galway,
Yeah,
2-disc edition.
Ah.
And I listened to the Chaminade on repeat when I was 12. And
When
I
you were
was
12,
like,
wow.
yeah, I was like obsessed. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with his playing. I was obsessed with the piece. I didn't really think I wasn't like as on board with like flute as a career. It wasn't like something I was like, yes, I really, really, really want to do this, you know, until like later high school. But I was super impacted by that piece.
Wow.
That like I think it was like the second track or something on that.
I love how, we all have that one experience of being obsessed with one piece around that age and just hammering it. Yeah. And it's always Jimmy. Yeah, it's great. Do you remember the first album in general that you bought? So non-flute.
First album it might have been. There were a few first one. It could have been In Sync.
Great.
Or I think or Backstreet Boys.
It's always one
It
of the
might
two,
have-
though, isn't it? Around that time, in the 90s.
Yeah, it was right around there. And then or Britney Spears. It was it was in that realm.
Yeah.
I remember like I had a Walkman before that.
Okay.
So it was more like I had Now 5 on cassette tape.
Now 5?
Yeah, like
It's going back. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel older.
No,
like,
you're
5?
fine. You're fine.
Oh my God.
I was
I
like,
think I started with like 14, but yeah, wow.
oh yeah. Well, I also think they're numbered differently in different countries, so I don't know.
Okay,
about
but yeah,
that for
we'll
sure.
stick with that, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was very early on. I was like, yeah, and then I got very into Blink-182 by the time I was like
Wow.
9, and I just saw them last week. Like
Last week?
I'm still in it. Yeah,
For the
It's
first
like-
time? Have you seen them live before?
No, I've seen them.
Oh.
No, I've seen them multiple times. They've sort of been like and I love their music because it's so dumb.
Yeah.
It's just like
It's great.
it is exactly the
great.
opposite of flute stuff. You know, it's like it's
Exactly,
not
yeah.
intellectual. It is exactly what it is. It's fun. It's like
Fun.
silly. It's just like
Yeah.
whatever. And
It's
so
great.
yeah, I mean, all the small things came out, and I lost my mind when I was like 10. So
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, I can see that with you. Yeah, I was much more Sum 41, but I still haven't seen them live yet. I really want to see them live.
really. Okay, I haven't either. I loved Sum 41. All that stuff
Yeah.
was
Yeah, all that
I mean,
pop punk thing. Yeah.
oh my god,
Oh,
that was
great.
my vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it. Okay, then leading into the next one, if
Mhm.
you had to do karaoke, what song would you sing?
Oh, Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, do you know I used to have a theory, and it's out the window now, but when I was at college, I was like 18, 19, I just had a theory that everyone was born with the knowledge of those lyrics. Like, you just knew it. It was just like an inherent thing in the human race. Now that I see like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds that don't know that song, breaks my heart. Absolutely
It's
breaks
so
my
good.
heart.
Yeah.
Because that song, like, I will never forget the words. To the day I drop and die, I will never forget the words of Skater Boy. Complicated as well. I'll never forget them.
Oh,
Ever. They're
so
locked
good.
in there.
I mean, equally good karaoke song.
Yeah. That's a
That
great
whole
call.
album. Oh, yeah.
I know. I could talk about Avril Lavigne all night. I might do an Avril Lavigne podcast. She's
You
only
should.
37 as well, by the way. I think I saw the other day. I was like,
I
how is she
know.
so young? I think she's been going back forever. But yeah,
I think she was
Yeah.
like 16 when that album came out.
that's it. Yeah. And she was she married to the guy from Sum 41 as well? I remember that
She
being like
was
a
the lead
big
singer,
moment.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you could switch instruments but be as good as you are on the flute, what would you switch to?
Um. Guitar.
Great answer. Okay, thank God, because I'm sick of hearing the cello. I'm sick of cello. I hate the cello, and cello's shite. Guitar, electric guitar, or classical guitar?
Like I would want to do a different genre.
Okay.
You know, like I think like yeah, because I don't think classical guitar. I don't know. I mean, that'd be cool too, but
Yeah,
I
but
think I'd want if because it you stipulated like and still be good at the flute.
yeah, yeah,
And so I'm like, well, if I could have the best of both worlds, like
yeah.
I want like that knowledge too
Okay,
of like a different style. I don't know.
okay. Would you be in like a pop punk band then?
Oh, I mean, in another life.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Oh, I know. I still think, yeah, if I had the choice between playing in the Arctic Monkeys or being in the Berlin Philharmonic, the Berlin Philharmonic can go fucking hell. I would be 100% the Arctic Monkeys, not even thinking about it. That's way cooler, man. Are you kidding me? Way cooler.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it would be. I don't know. I've always wanted to explore more genres. I feel like
Yeah.
I have friends who are like rock musicians, and they're like, oh, I just like explore this thing, and I make mistakes on purpose, and I like try other things, and I try this
Yeah.
out, and I just like vibe with it, and I'm like,
I wish I
I
could do that.
want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't have an anxiety attack when you play a wrong note.
That's great. Like, you mean the wrong notes don't exist for you? That's wild. Yeah.
Even more, saying, yeah. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
if you could have a career outside of music, what would you do?
Um, outside of music,
What did you want to be when you were a kid, for example, when you were growing up?
when I was growing up, like interior design.
Ah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, the bookshelves.
I'm not being sarcastic, by the way. That sounded so sarcastic when I said that. No, but I can see that as your personality. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I would like when I was a kid, I would spend all day on a Saturday like completely redesigning my childhood home. I would
Okay.
look up like things online. I would budget. I would like look up different tiles and flooring and pick it all out and arrange the furniture hypothetically in every room in my house. And I don't know why I had such a desire to do
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it's still like I've just got my apartment like more. I moved in November. I just got it like kind of more the way I like it, and I like
Okay.
every day I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
It
I
is
don't
great,
know.
isn't it?
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so just like having a space, I think that actually really, matters to me personally. But yeah, I think that might be it. I don't know.
No. Well, yeah. Still could do that as well. Maybe there's a way to combine food pen and interior
It's true.
design. Nobody's done it yet, but
Yeah.
here.
We'll see.
Okay, if you could have a drink with any musician, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh, this one I got stuck on a little bit. I'm not exactly sure. I have okay. Could it be any art form?
I'll let it go, yeah.
Or okay,
I'll let it
Maya
go.
Angelou, I would have coffee with in an instant. I feel like I'm much more interested in poetry and writing, consuming it, than I am in music. I don't know why, but
Okay.
like that's always been like more emotionally like compelling in some way.
Okay.
But like I think in terms of music, I don't know. I'm tempted to say like more of a rock musician than a classical musician.
Yeah, that'd be more fun.
I don't know. Like that might be it. I've been very inspired by like Dave Grohl,
Yeah.
and his like he would be a great person. I would
Oh,
definitely love to have
be
a
great
drink
for a
with.
drink with Dave Grohl, yeah.
Like, and because I think in one interview he was like, "Yeah, I learned 3 chords when I was 15, and I got up on a stage with a guitar." And I
Yeah.
was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, I know.
And I'm
Was
like,
that the thing? He can barely like read music as well, and he's
yeah. Well,
he's
Paul
Dave Grohl.
McCartney can't read music.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true. Yeah,
can we take ourselves less seriously? Like,
I know.
like,
Actually, I remember reading as well when they did the Nirvana like comeback gig. I think it was for the anniversary of Kurt Cobain's death. So
yeah.
Dave Grohl played drums, and I can't remember the name of the guitar player. Chris Novich. It's going to annoy me now what his name is. But anyway, when they got him back to do the gig, he had to go to a guitar shop and buy a book of Nirvana songs on how to play them on guitar to relearn them. Like, man, they were your songs. He's like, yeah, I just forgot about it. I just bought the book and then did it and then played. I was like, yeah, that's it. See, no big deal.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. These guys know what they're doing. Okay, last question. What is your favorite drink? You can have alcoholic or non-alcoholic, or you can have both.
Okay, well, non-alcoholic would be a black coffee.
Okay. Very
That's
mature. Very cool.
that's what we do every day. But alcoholic, I would say like a hazy IPA.
Oh, really? You're that kind of person? You're a
Yeah.
hipster? I didn't know that. There you are.
I mean, I lived in Austin, where it has like amazing breweries.
I've heard this, yeah.
In Austin, Texas, and it like they're just like I don't know what it is. I'm like that's the beer I love and want always.
Wow.
And I don't know. Yeah, I really like cocktails. It just I honestly think it depends on the vibe.
Of course it does, yeah. No.
You know, like
But a hazy IPA, wow. I'm very, I don't know, surprised. I'm very surprised. That's a very cool answer. It's effortlessly cool. Hazy IPA and a black coffee. That is very cool.
Oh God, that is too hipster.
It is very hipster, yeah.
I kind of don't want
judgment.
it now.
Nah, too late. Too late. Put that in. No, we're not cutting that out of the podcast. Right, well, Chelsea, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to plug before you go? Tell people to check out the whole, like, obviously your social media and your YouTube, but go ahead, tell them.
Yeah, I mean, social media, YouTube. I'm at _Chelsea Tanner on most things. But yeah, I have a podcast called Align Your Mind. It's just all about being a human, and playing music and like navigating all of that stuff. And you know, I do one-on-one coaching. I teach people online, and so I'm like that's my whole thing. I love doing both of those things. It's like my favorite. And thank you so much for having me, Gareth. I really appreciate it.
Kidding me?
I love what you're doing with the podcast, and like this is such a like breath of fresh air, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you to say. Also, I'll say your podcast, genuinely, people should check it out. I think over 80 episodes, did I hear you say the other day now?
Yeah, I started it in the pandemic, and I've sort of gone in and out of it as my life has like evolved. So I started in 2021, and so it's not been every week by any means.
Just whenever it comes out.
And now it's every week.
It's picking up a bit. Yeah, I've noticed that. Mm-hmm. Have you had any thoughts about your episode 100 special?
No, I don't even know what episode I'm on.
80 something. I remember thinking like we're all the same kind of number. You're on 80 something.
Okay.
Are you going to the NFA this year?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. Because I think my episode 100 is going to be in and around NFA time. It's going to be in and around then, so I'll have to do something ridiculous. Anyway, thinking out loud.
There's got to be like an inline G party, right? Like,
I hear there's going to be an Inline G party.
okay, yeah.
Every day is an Inline G party, but there's going to be an Inline G party. Well, last year I was just sort of vibing it out. NFA, I was getting to know things, you know. This year, I'm taking the place by storm. I've got some big plans. NFA.
Gotta do it, yeah.
Especially because I'm not actually officially part of it.
Okay.
Dogs off the leash now. Dogs off the leash. I can enjoy myself now. Not culpable to anybody except myself. And I have very low standards for myself.
Nice. Yeah, well, that'll be exciting. That'll be super fun.
See you there, yeah. Great. Well, then, Chelsea, thank you very much. I'm going to hit stop record. Guys, thank you very much for listening and watching as usual. And I will see you all next week. Cheers.
Get your man the flute to play song, the fuck.
Crocky had the dreads.